Here we have a copy of Brave and the Bold number 29. This is the second appearance of the Justice League of America, who debuted in the previous issue, and it originally was published in 1960. Now, this, of course, is not an original. This is a facsimile edition. You can see the barcode on the back cover there, maybe. This is a facsimile edition that came out on January 8th, 2025, which I bought this week. The funny thing is Marvel has been reprinting the early issues of Fantastic Four now, beginning with issue number 1, which also came out on January 8th, 2025. So these Fantastic Four issues, one per month, will be released through the year 2025. I did a review of Fantastic Four number 1 on my Facebook page, not a video review, but just a written review of the issue. So this will be worth picking up too if you're interested in Silver Age comics, especially about the birth of the Marvel Age and the Silver Age. So it's interesting to compare these, and I will do that a little bit later in this video. But first I thought I would just talk about the issue. Now, one thing I noticed, and I also posted about this on Facebook, is that although this facsimile is, intended to be a facsimile with the original ads and so forth, I noticed that they have added credits to the bottom here. Gardner, Fox, writer, Mike Sekowsky, penciler, Murphy Anderson, inks, and so on. So, the letter and the color. So, I was like, that was not there. I mean, I don't have a copy of the original issue, but I know that was not there in the original. And, I guess I can understand why they added that, because otherwise they wouldn't have any credits. But it seems kind of odd to have integrated it into the panel. It might have been better just to have it in the fine print here or something. The other funny thing, though, about this is when you look this up on the Grand Comics database, www.comics.org, and look up this issue, the credits are different. Because when I saw this, I was like, Murphy Anderson inks. This doesn't look like Murphy Anderson's inks. His inks are a little more hard to describe, a little more detailed, And so I looked it up, and it was, if I remember right, it was like Bernard Sachs and Joe Gila were the inkers. And I think the letterer is wrong as well. So I was like, okay, not only did they add something that wasn't in the original, they got the credits wrong. So, whose idea was that? That was not a good idea. Hopefully they don't, do that for the next issue, which is Brave and the Bold number 30, the third appearance of the Justice League of America. And that issue will be released in March. I think it's like March 5th or something like that. But anyway, so I read the issue yesterday. Now, basically it's about this guy from the future with a big head, sort of typical DC villain of the time with a sort of big forehead. And who comes from the far future. It's like the year, what was it? It was 11,960. That's the year that this guy comes from. He's this criminal. It's this big convoluted thing where he has this robot that can travel through time, has discovered time travel. The police of his time are out to get him. He has 4 weapons that he can use to destroy them, but he doesn't know which one will be the one to use. So he decides to go back in time to defeat the Justice League and figure out which weapon will be the best weapon to use against these police. The thing is, he has this diary that Wonder Woman has written, or this journal, that is kind of, that has survived all these thousands of years, where it mentions that this guy, Zotar, has defeated the Justice League, but part of the writing is blurred, over time it has decayed, so you can't get the whole passage here, but part of it's, sort of smudged out, and then it says to defeat the Justice League of America. So he assumes, I have defeated them already in the past, so I'm going to fulfill my destiny, go back to the past, and to figure out which weapon to defeat them with. So we're only on page 3, and it's this big convoluted thing where we're thousands of years in the future, now going to the back of the past, and so forth. He encounters Snapper Carr, honorary member of the Justice League of America who had debuted in the previous issue, who has this sort of, beatnik hipster lingo. Dig that crazy claw, and man, this is a real drag. I've got to cut out of here real fast. I don't want to do the panic button bit, but if this ain't a real cool emergency, then I've got holes in my head. So he's summoning the Justice League. The Justice League come, except for Superman. It says, why has Superman not come? So it's this thing where Zotar has, captured them, and they must individually, in early Justice League fashion, must individually face off against the villain. And each are, actually, they each defeat him, but he goes back into the past each time. So he figures out, that weapon isn't good enough because Flash defeated it. Now I'll go back an hour in time to when Flash first set off. They were like, oh no, Flash got defeated. He's back in 1 minute. And he's like, no, Flash defeated me, but now we're going to do this. And I went back in time. So now Aquaman and Martian Manhunter, John Jones, who I noticed his name is misspelled. I had to look it up later because I was like, shouldn't it be an extra Z on the end? Well, it looks like all through this story, his name is misspelled, except for on the front, on the front there, in the roll call, his name is spelled correctly, but with the extra Z at the end. But in the rest of the story, it's not. And the funny thing is his name's, it's almost like it has a different sort of font to it, so it's almost like it was if it was added in later or something. Very odd. Anyway, so they defeat him. And, so you have the rest of the thing. The funny thing about this is, and sort of the difference between the Fantastic Four and the Justice League is the Fantastic Four story reads on a very simple level. And, the funny thing is some Silver Age readers, some old-time fans are like, oh, Marvel appealed to the older reader. But this stuff was very... The writing was at a much higher level, I think, than the Fantastic Four, which was a very easy read. Here, you're getting into all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's the sort of thing where DC would have these riddles type of things, these sort of puzzles that would have to be solved by the hero in order to stop the villain. It was less about just punching him in the face or something. You had to sort of figure out these things, and some of the things that they have to figure out are kind of silly. Because he gives them a clue, and it's like, oh, the ringed neck pheasant, Green Lantern says, is the official state bird of South Dakota. That's the place where Gutzon Borglum carved living rock in a national monument. The Mount Rushmore Memorial, that's where Zotar is waiting. So they figured out the clue based on, the national bird of South Dakota, or the official bird, things like that. I mean, at one point when Flash has the clue, he has to actually... this pre-internet era, has to go to the library to look up Hesperus and figure out the clue to that one. Look in the encyclopedia. Some of these text pages and, filler pages, too, are pretty wild. Like, The Wonders of Time, it was about time travel. Or not time travel, but even just, like, anomalies in time. Like, where... well, things like, a clock that has stopped is more accurate than a clock that loses a minute a day, because it would take longer for that clock to reach the time where it's correct, whereas the non-working clock is correct twice a day. Or things like you would be in, if your plane is traveling at a certain rate, you would be like still on the same day or something like that if you're traveling in a certain direction. Some of the stuff is really odd. Science says you're wrong if you believe that, and it has a statement here, but it's saying actually that's incorrect. How like the summer in the northern hemisphere is hotter than the summer, or it was like all this stuff. It was kind of confusing, and I was thinking, man, this is... when they wrote this, they had to, Gardner Fox was the writer, had to really dig into some obscure stuff. And it kind of made me think that, this really appealed kind of to like well, on one hand, they were doing it for sort of educational reasons. They know that they're writing for young people, and they want this to not just be a stupid comic book. They want it to be educational in a sense too, that they're actually learning things, as they're reading. But it also appeals sort of to the science nerd, like who obscure facts of science and things like that. Now, there is another thing in here. They end up defeating the villain. As you can probably predict, which I predicted, the message on the blurred thing was incomplete, where it's like his Zotar's unsuccessful attempt to defeat the Justice League of America. That part had been smudged out. I figured that was going to be the case. So Wonder Woman is sort of writing this down, their adventure. And I believe in the Wonder Woman in the Justice Society was considered their secretary. So maybe that was like a sort of holdover from her position in the Justice Society. Now, the thing is, they explain why Superman was not present during this. Of course, Superman saves the day and, is able to defeat the robot. But Batman had went to go figure out where Superman was because he wasn't answering his Justice League signal. And Batman says, I figured Superman was traveling in time, the only medium our alarm signal cannot travel through. After tracking him down, we rushed him here just in time. Well, you mean to say, he was traveling in time, in all of time, and Batman was able to track him down? It sounds like a story there, but of course you can't because it's like the next to last page. How in the world was he able to track Superman through time or to get him to come back? It probably would have been another weird time thing where, Batman in 1960 figures, if I leave a note, to an alarm to go off and, the future, if he's in the future, then it will go off. But how would he even know where, anyways, I'm thinking, someone like Mark Waid could write a modern story explaining that. There's probably a comic story to be told there, but you would have to figure out all the wonders of time to figure out how Batman would be able to summon Superman if he's in a different time period. Anyways, it's a fun comic. It's a good story. I do recommend it. It's $4.99, which is like the standard price of a comic these days. Plus, there's in a sense no ads because you're getting all these other ads. You're the vintage ads. Plus, you have all these little text fillers and things like that. These educational things, which DC used to run all the time. So, fun comic, and like I said, it is. Now, this has newsprint interiors, whereas Fantastic Four has the glossy interiors. Some people prefer the newsprint, some people prefer this. I kind of like the glossy better because it kind of makes it pop more, whereas this, newsprint has more of a faded look. But some people think, well, this is more true to the actual comic, so... Like I said, in the Fantastic Four, you don't have any of you do have the original ads, but you don't have any of those educational pages. You don't have as much esoteric knowledge that is communicated by the writer. It's basically just more action, and sort of, it's more of an artist-driven approach, whereas this is more of a writer-driven approach. Mike Sekowsky is not is action-oriented, obviously, as Jack Kirby. And so his style falls more into the style of the 1950s, which had a more mature style, I think, than the Golden Age, which was more of a, rambunctious era, with the superheroes. So Kirby is sort of bringing back sort of the excitement of the Golden Age into the Silver Age. But Mike Sekowsky's art here is, like I said, a more mature type style that one would associate with the 1950s. This is, after all, only 1960 when this came out. But on the other hand, so the Kirby's art is probably more modern in the sense that's more eye-grabbing, action-oriented. But Gardner Fox's story, in a way, is probably more modern in the sense that it takes a wider scope. It's you have all the stuff with the future, him going into the past. It's more tightly plotted with things referring from the beginning to the end. He has all these tasks to perform, the 4 different weapons. It's much more writer dominated, and that in a way is more modern because you can imagine someone like Jonathan Hickman or Jason Aaron or somebody like that kind of having this construction that these characters are going through the paces. Whereas in this other in the Fantastic Four #1, it's sort of less like that. They have a monster and they're going to fight him. So I guess maybe today's comics are sort of a combination of both approaches. A very writerly way, although not as wordy, obviously, but then also having the dynamic, action-oriented art style as well. So that's it. I recommend picking it up. Probably number 28, the first appearance of Justice League of America, might still be available at your local comic shop. And the next issue, number 30, will be coming out in March and also available at your local comic shop. So a good way to pick them up for the price of a current comic. That's it for me. Thanks for watching.